Hey there, readers, writers, and friends. Story Serpent here, and today we are talking about The 13th Child by Erin A. It was published September of 2024 by Delacorte Press, which is a portion of Random House and therefore Penguin Random House. Erin A. Craig as an author is new to me. I actually stayed away from House of Salt and Sorrows because a friend read it and said it was kind of meh, and I don't really have time for a lot of mostly meh in my life these days. But one of the cool things about following an author and one of the joys as a reader is watching an author get better and better with time. So, in the hope that maybe we had a next step up in her offerings, I took a gander. And as you can see, I did borrow my copy from the library this time around. And despite the fact that I am currently receiving threatening mail from the library, I'm gonna give it back. I realize I owe you full replacement cost at this point, but I'm going to give it back. But before we get into all of that, today's random words are like, share, subscribe, Diaphanous. So let's see what this book has to say for itself. Hazel Trapus has always known she wasn't like her siblings. A 13th child promised to one of the gods, she spends her childhood waiting for her benefactor, Merrick, the god of death, to arrive and take her away. When he does, he lays out exactly what he's planned for Hazel's future. She will become a great and celebrated healer. To aid her endeavors, Merrick blesses Hazel with a gift, the ability to instantly deduce the exact cure needed to treat the sick. But all gifts come with a price. Hazel can see when death has claimed a patient and is tasked with ending their suffering permanently. Haunted by the ghosts of those she's killed, Hazel longs to run. But destiny brings her to the royal court, where she meets Leopold, a rakish prince with a disdain for everyone and everything. And that's where Hazel faces her biggest dilemma yet. Should she save the life of a king marked to die? Hazel knows what she is meant to do, and what her heart is urging her toward, but what will happen if she goes against the will of Death himself? From the astonishing mind of Erin A. Craig comes the breathtaking fairy tale retelling readers have been waiting for. What does a life well lived mean, and how do we justify the impossible choices we make for the ones we love? The astonishing mind is an epithet of choice. That's some high stakes to live up to. I will say that conceptually this book is very interesting, and I think most young people, most of your teenage YA audience will really enjoy it. I was actually really surprised because a lot of the little blurbs from other authors on the back have a lot to say about how dark it is, how gothic it is, and quite honestly, despite the fact that Hazel's patron deity is the god of death, I didn't actually find it as dark as they were claiming. I think that's because for me, I believe death is a part of life. It's a journey we all take, to quote Gandalf. And so the idea that death is kind of looming around us is something I have accepted and therefore doesn't seem particularly dark to me. There are dark elements. There's even a pretty dang good scare in here at one point. But I just didn't find it to leave me feeling dark or feeling heavy. I think in part because I find the morality here really solid, which for anything being called a dark fantasy in the YA space, that is rare. I was actually surprised by how thoughtful the morality throughout really was. There is a lot of natural justice, cosmic justice for those who have made poor choices. There are characters who change in positive ways because of negative experiences they've had. We also see the way that trauma and negative experiences can twist people. We see how religious fervor can create zealotry, but we also see that the supernatural is very real, that it is to be respected, that those that devote themselves in thoughtful ways and that faith lived out with sincerity can have a positive impact on the people around you. I was shocked to see that, but very, very pleased. The other thematic elements that I found really compelling was the idea that a life well lived is not necessarily a life of fame, a life of grandioseness. It's probably, it's hard to live a life well lived in poverty. We all know that. But the studies also show that there is a threshold beyond which more stuff, more money, more accolades don't necessarily lead to more satisfaction. And I think Craig, as an author, recognizes that. And I think she does her best to show that it is the day-to-day, everyday little choices that we make in a positive direction and the little comforts and loves that we give in exchange in families, in relationships, are what make for a good life in the end. I was a little disappointed that all of her men in power aren't great people. I was kind of hoping that at least one of the individuals who stepped into a role of power and authority, one of the dudes, would end up being a good guy. But the only good guy who comes from power and authority ends up abdicating. Spoiler alert. And I found that a little disappointing because we need good men to step into roles of authority and bring a moral voice and a moral compass to the people they are leading and guiding. And quite frankly, the person who ends up taking over is kind of a shallow, slutty snot of a human being. And I'm not sure I want to put the kingdom in her hands at all. I do appreciate that there are both families of great dysfunction and families of great love and affection depicted throughout. Other than the whole men don't get to rule things thing, I didn't see a lot of overt feminism. I didn't see any explicit homosexuality, any gay relationships. Most everybody is in a heteronormative relationship. That was nice. The only things I marked, and I don't know if you can see, but I marked a few, were just little inconsistencies. She would be holding a bag in her hand, and then before ever putting it down, her hands would be balled in fists in her pocket. Her only experience with a bath would be like a big wooden tub that obviously had to be overturned. But then she's talking about the expectation of things going down the drain as if that's a normal thing for her. Just stuff like that where I was like, okay, like, it's a goof, and an editor should have caught that. Erin, your editor should have caught that. There's even one place where she behaves surprised by a bit of information that she already knew. She had already guessed at previous, and then we're supposed to believe she's shocked. Moments like this are what pull a reader out of the story, and so I was a little disappointed to see that, because it's the kind of care and attention that a good beta reader or a good editor will bring to a writer's attention. Really should have caught those. Other than that, though, it was so much fun. It was satisfying. I enjoyed the end. Again, fantasy romance is a really hard genre to pull off because you're either doing the fantasy really well and then the romance is okay, or you're getting all of the tropey romance things happening and the fantasy is nonsense. That's just been my personal experience. I tend to enjoy them more if it's like, maybe I don't 100% believe the romance, but the fantasy is on point. That's what the 13th Child is. It leans more to that. The fantasy is solid. The romance, it was fine, and it was satisfying. Could have been better, could have been a little bit more believable. The only slightly titillating part wasn't real, spoiler alert, and that was a little disappointing. But anyway, as far as The Story Serpent is concerned, The 13th Child by Erin A. Craig gets a best beach read. You'll have fun, you don't have to worry about your kids coming across anything crazy, and it might even provoke some interesting conversations about what a life well lived means, what happens after death, how we feel about death and dying. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. If you've got a book you want to see The Story Serpent take on, feel free to put it in the comments. Until next time, read on, write on, stay sharp.